Thanks everybody for joining. These sessions, we're trying to do these sessions more and more. We did a few of these last year. We've done a few in conjunction with a couple of other organisations, but these webinar sessions are basically replacing our virtual events until we can get back into those conference centres and meet you all face to face. So hopefully we find it a useful and engaging session. This one is all around virtual instructor-led training within Microsoft Teams. Just running through a quick agenda then before I hand over to Travis. So Travis works for our partners eLearning Force. eLearning Force are the authors of LMS 365, but what Travis is going to run through today is native teams, what we can already do within native teams. And Travis, I don't know if you want to maybe run through the bullet points you've got here and explain a little bit about what you're going to be running through today.
Yeah, for sure. So the purpose of my session is to give you some tools that you can walk away with today and make use of them to help you in your virtual instructor sessions and presentations without any cost associated and simply using what you're already subscribing to. So I've got a list of a summary of the newest additions to the Teams meeting functions, and I'm just going to go through that. We're also going to talk very briefly about Microsoft Viva, because that's something that has been making some waves in recent learning communities. So we'll have a quick update of where we are with that.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Travis is going to hand over to myself. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Charles. I'm an essential computing employee. LMS 365 is one of my sort of specialist products that I work with day in, day out. So I'm going to be running through what LMS 365 brings to the table in terms of enhancing and building on what Travis said there with native teams. So I'm going to be talking about how we can deliver training. That's going to be a mix of e-learning as well as the virtual instructor-led stuff that I'm going to come on to. But looking at dashboards, what we can link, how we can be collaborative and provide a collaborative learning experience to our users. And then I'll go into a little bit of detail around how we manage instructor-led courses within the system. All will become clear as we dive into the meat of it. But I'm conscious of time, so I will hand over to you, Travis, to start on your piece, if that's okay.
All right. So again, the method that we're doing this of being able to present a Teams meeting from a Teams meeting is that I'm doing this within the Teams web app. And this means that when I start presenting, my video is going to disappear and you should be able to see my screen. Right now it looks like it's a large picture of Charlie. Can you guys see that? All right, great. So what I'm now going to do is leave this and go into an existing Teams meeting that I have running. Can you just give me verbal confirmation that that's work come through okay, Charlie?
Yeah, I can see that. I hope everybody else can.
So this is a Teams meeting here that I am running right now. On the other end, I have our dear colleague Ross, who is muted, and he is simply here to enable me to show you some of the functions here. And Teams is coming with features all the time, and it's difficult to keep track of them and to make the most use of them. And that's really what my session is all about, is summarizing what has come, what is there, what is particularly useful for delivering training remotely and virtually. So the first thing that I want to talk about is presenter mode. And this is a really great feature that I first discovered in actually researching for one of these webinars, and I've been using it since. This is one of my favorites, and this is to help you with that scenario of presenting something via PowerPoint, but being unable to view your learners and your users' reactions. Because as we all know, when we're sharing an entire screen, then you're not able to see those attendees and see what's going on. You can maybe, if you have two monitors, see a little picture of one person, but you're unable to get a full overview. But presenter mode fixes this. And the way that we use presenter mode is by going to the share content option here. And typically what most people do and what I do is I'll just grab a window and say that I'm going to share my entire screen. But in order for you to use presenter mode, you're not going to use any of these options, neither the PowerPoint that you might have open, but you need to use this PowerPoint section over here. And what you're first going to see is a number of PowerPoint slides that have already been uploaded to a specific channel or a meeting. but you can always browse as well. So if the slide that you're wanting to present isn't here, then if you click on browse, you can upload it from your computer, or you can access it within your OneDrive. And we'll just do the OneDrive example, where I will grab this learning transformation PowerPoint and say share. And as soon as I do this, the people who are attending, in this case Ross on the other end, they are only seeing the current slide that I'm presenting, and this is the presenter view that you might be familiar from within PowerPoint. So that gives you access to any notes you might have, gives you also a full overview of what's coming up, giving you the ability to skip ahead to a slide that you want to present out of order, for instance. But the thing that I like the most about it is that you get the full overview, at least within the confines of this space, of your users, as well as those who have their cameras turned on, in order to be able to get an overview of what's going on, what are their reaction, how are they engaged, are they falling asleep, all of those things. So it's a simple feature, but one that I think is incredibly useful. Something else which has been talked about a lot and isn't that new, but is still something that a lot of people haven't used yet, is the breakout rooms. And breakout rooms, of course, is allowing for a larger meeting to be broken out into rooms, small rooms where they can collaborate and they can work on some brainstorms or projects or whatever the case might be. And in order to start a breakout room, you go up here to this little box with a smaller box in it, and you just click it. And it's a very simple workflow. The first choice you get is how many rooms do you want to create, and you've got the ability to have up to 50. And then you can decide how you want to assign people to the rooms. You can either do it automatically, so it'll pull out just randomly select individuals, or you can do it manually, in which case you would choose who would go into each room. And at this point, I only have one attendee in my meeting. I could send him to his own room if I wanted to, but I really suggest that you try this out with a small team of your colleagues and experience how that works. Essentially, it's going to pull them out of the main meeting, and then you as the organizer will be stopping those breakout rooms, and they'll automatically be pulled back into the main section. So this is a feature that for those who've been delivering virtual training on a number of platforms, including Zoom, have really been pushing for within Teams. And it came out, I believe, at the end of the year last year, and I think will probably only get better and better as time goes on. Charlie, he mentioned live captions. And live captions is a piece of accessibility feature, which is a very important one to have for those who are hard of hearing. And I've just turned this on here so we can see this at the bottom. But also, this is something that is unique in that it can also enable for translation. So we have some colleagues who are speaking Russian from time to time. And if they're doing some workshopping with the Russian-speaking group, and then we've got the Danish colleagues who are not really fluent in the language, they're able to let those colleagues collaborate, be part of the meeting, and simply jump in when there's something that is an important point that they want to discuss and switch over to English, which I thought was a pretty cool use case. But otherwise, this is a very useful tool for anyone who's hard of hearing or simply wants to follow along in text as well. A component of this is that right now we have our live captioning, but none of this is being recorded. You could, however, turn on additionally the transcription. So you can do this independently or together, but basically what transcription is going to do is take what I'm saying and make this as a recorded document that will be accessible after the meeting. So if there's any sessions where you've got legal requirements to document what's happening at the meeting, this is a really great shortcut. So we're constantly reviewing our information security policies and There's a whole lot of ISO 27001 related meetings that are happening. And I know that's a real life use case that we're personally using this internally in order to document everything that's been discussed and agreed upon in those sessions. So that is a nice, relatively new feature. I think this came in March. And all of this, the transcription, the recording, and also attendance, is being summarized now in what is referred to as a meeting recap. And this is one that I was also happy to discover. So if you're using this transcription, if you're recording your screen and you want to go back after the fact and make use of all this information, then what you want to do is go into your Teams, go to the Teams calendar, find the meeting that you're wanting to access. So for instance, we can jump into this meeting here, double click, and then you'll see that in the details section, we have this meeting recap area now. And this has a number of great stuff. This has your notes, if you've made any notes during the meeting. This also has access to the whiteboard app. If you're using the whiteboard for internal collaboration, then that would be recorded and accessible here as well. We've got the transcript, and in the transcript section, this brings you both into recordings and transcripts, so we can see this transcript, we can download it. We can also access the recording by going into Stream. And then it has attendee reporting. So this is another one which is really, really great. And what happens here is when you click on this will download the attendance in a Excel sheet. So this is the output from that meeting that Charlie and I held to prepare for a very similar session like this. And you can see here that this has our meeting title. This has the start and end time, as well as who joined, when did they leave, what was the duration, and what was their role. Were they an organizer, were they presenting, or were they simply attending? And you can see here in this case, Charlie had joined and then left. And what happened here was he was actually assigned into a breakout room. So if you're using all of these features in conjunction, then please consider that fact that when you're doing breakout rooms, it will segment the amount of time that the users have been in the main meeting. All right, and then the last stop on my session is to talk a little bit about Microsoft Viva. So for those of you who might not be familiar with Microsoft Viva, this is a new product category launched by Microsoft, which is an employee experience platform. And this has some different components which have an effect on your ability to deliver learning and enhancing the tools that are available within Teams to do so. There are two specific components of it. There are 4 apps in total as part of Microsoft Viva, and they can be used independently or together. There's one in particular that's called Viva Learning, which is a very exciting app, something that I'm personally excited about, and which is really going to add an additional learning experience platform type layer on top of what we're already doing within Teams and enable a lot of AI-driven abilities for automatically suggested content, and also being used as an aggregator of content from a lot of different places. Unfortunately, it's not out yet. It's something which is in a selective preview where you can go to the Microsoft Viva page and you could sign up to get access to it. But it's something that I'm personally not expecting to be fully rolled out until the beginning of next year. But like I said, it's something that we're very excited about and which we will be, of course, integrating with natively. But what is out, and in the spirit of my session of what you could start using today, is something called Viva Connections. And Viva Connections is something that you can pin into your apps over here on the left-hand side. And this allows you to have a branded access point to any piece of SharePoint functionality. So this would, in this case, this is going to pull us directly into our intranet, but you could be pulling this into a specific site collection that could have your learning material present on it, Or if you're using something like LMS 365, where we are turning the SharePoint site collection into a learning system, you'd be able to have that pinned directly here within the left-hand side. So here, this is our internal intranet where we can also access our learning management system here. But this gives you the ability to create some specific pages that you think would be particularly relevant for your users and rebrand it. You can put your own logo in and you can give it its own name and pin this then over here onto the left. And again, this is called Viva Connections. And that was the last stop on my brief tour of what's new, what's interesting and useful from a training perspective within Teams. So at this point, now that I've mentioned LMS 365, I'll hand over to Charlie and let him go into more depth of what's possible when you start adding tools like LMS 365 to your existing Teams environment.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Travis. Really appreciate that. Not to put you on the spot, but there's been a question from Eleanor in the chat.
Yeah.
And she said, do you need licenses for that part? Talking about Viva connections here.
Viva Connections is a free app.
Okay.
So there are, with the Microsoft Viva platform, as I mentioned, there's 4 apps and they're not all ready yet. And Microsoft also hasn't released pricing yet for instance, Viva Learning. Nobody really knows how that's going to be licensed. However, Viva Connections is to my understanding, a free option, and it's a pretty simple tool that's just encapsulating a specific SharePoint site collection or location, and that would not have any licensing implications to my knowledge.
Cool. As mentioned, I'm going to build on what Travis showed us there with native teams, and those features are coming out all the time, and we're trying to stay on top of them as they develop. Everything's been escalated and put through its paces with COVID and the need for this, which is great. This hybrid way of working for training certainly is going to be here to stay for a good while, given the COVID climate. But what I'm going to run through is how we can enhance that, how we can build on that, how we can track, report, and provide a full LMS and learning experience using the Teams infrastructure as the basis of it. Now, Travis has already alluded to it in the way that LMS 365 is built. We leverage the SharePoint infrastructure. So, all of the course material, all of the administration, all of the reporting and the building all happens within your SharePoint environment. And what that allows us to do is, like Travis said there, with Viva Connections, we can certainly link to it, but as standard Microsoft functionality, and with the LMS 365 application installed, we can link to aspects of our LMS system, in this LMS 365, directly from a team or a chat window like we got here. Now, as I go through this demo, as I mentioned at the start, I'm going to run through some e-learning examples as well as some virtual instructor-led bits and pieces, but the astute members in the audience will see we've got things like a dashboard, a course catalog up here. You've even got a training course linked. I'm going to be running through all of that. Now, as I mentioned, we're in a new world. I'm living in Teams, and that was sort of the whole premise behind LMS 365 is why take your users anywhere else, and the Teams has certainly helped us allow users to access things in the flow of their work, not to use the marketing tagline too heavily, but we're learning in the flow of work is the way that we look at it. So just to give you an idea of what LMS 365 does then. So you can see I've got this learning center team set up here, and this is just a demo example. So it's just Tony, myself, and I believe Ross as well in here. But this is just a chat that we've got going on. I'll come back to that in a little bit, but you can see, as I mentioned, we've got links to things like our dashboard. Now, this is going to take me to an overview screen of my learning journey. Now, this is tracking everything that we've got built within our LMS system. So that's mandatory training, that's optional training, compliance, and all types of course content. So e-learning, classroom, webinar blended, whatever it might be. And what we're displaying here is my learning journey. So I've got an overview of my training status. I'm not doing particularly well. I'm at 25% on my training completed with 75% to go, but I'm sure I'll pick it up. You can see I've got a little bit more information on the training I've got to complete. You can see I've got information on my planned training and my certificates and competencies down the bottom. But if I click over on the left here to click this training tab, these are all of the courses that I'm currently enrolled to. that's based on maybe my role, maybe the division I work in within the organization. Some of these you can see are mandatory. We can see this one here is mandatory, but these are the courses that I'm actively working on. Some of them you can see I haven't started, and some of them I am currently in progress on. But if I want to click into one of these courses and continue my learning, it's very, very simple to do so. I simply click the play course button here, or the little arrow there, and that's going to take me to it. But along here, I can filter on, the ones that I've completed, the ones that I plan to complete. I can hide any of the inactive ones. I can just filter on, mandatory only. I can filter on due date. So if things are, need to be done in a certain order, I can filter on those. And I can change the view if I have to. And if I'm in a position where I've got a lot of courses here, obviously I can search on those. I will click into a course to show you what those look like in a moment or two, but just to give you some details on the overview on what we've got in terms of tracking and reporting as a user, I can see all of my certificates and competencies here. So I can see which ones are valid, which ones are planned, and I can see when they were issued and if there's any expiry dates to those. As a user, I can download these as well. Maybe I want to keep a hard copy and print it out, stick it on my wall if it's something good, or maybe I just want to keep a copy of it myself. Likewise, we've got competencies here. Again, similar demo systems are not too heavily populated, but you can see the ones that I've got, the level of skill that I've got, level of competency that I've got, and in which area. So you can see I've got this working from home, and I've got a standard level competency. Actually, it's been revoked this month, which is worrying because we've been working from home for nearly a year and a half now. So that's a bit worrying that that's been revoked. But I can see that from here, and I can filter on those statuses as well for competencies. Again, I won't spend too much time on this. We've got a user transcript. This is basically a full list of the actions that I've taken. And an area down here, this is like Marmite. I think for some organizations, they love to utilize this. For some, they don't. But we've got some education units or CPD points that we can associate to the completion of courses or granting of competencies as well. So you can see here, I've got these ones are planned, and you can see the number of points that are going to be associated to these. And that can feed into a leaderboard if you like. I haven't got one to show you here, but if you can have leaderboards set up for teams, for the organization, and they can filter into that. I just wanted to touch on that to give you an idea of what we're looking at and what courses sort of look like before I go into the collaborative ways of working. Now, being built within teams allows us to leverage what Travis was talking about. So, the conference calls, the live captioning, all of those things. But the other aspects that we can do, it's sort of about bringing the office online, bringing that virtual office, if you like. So we can see I've got this team set up. Like I said, it's a demo. It doesn't have to be set up this way. This is just one example that I've got here. And Tony, Ross, and I have the ability to chat to one another within this team. But we've also got the ability to share things like Tony's shared the whiteboard. Fantastic. She's also added a tab to the top, which is our learning reports. Great. But you can see here that Ross has actually tagged Tony in something and said, hey, I really think you should check out this training course. And we can do this simply by clicking this small little LMS 365 icon down here. And this is going to pull up the full list of courses and resources that are in our LMS 365 environment. Now, I could simply look for a course, maybe a OneDrive, OneNote course, something like that. It's going to pull back those options, and I'm going to be able to share that course to whoever is in this chat. So immediately, I've got the ability to be collaborative in the way that I share this learning with those users in this particular chat, but also perhaps Ross is struggling in that area, or Tony needs some help, and she wants us to do it together. Well, we could simply, start a quick conference call with the three of us on here and run through the e-learning course together, if you like. So from that perspective, it's very, very useful, and we can be helpful, collaborative in the way that we learn, and sharing content has never really been easier. So that's a really, really useful item that we've got from the chat window. If I go up to these links again, we can also link directly to a course. So maybe this course here is the latest and greatest for the Learning Center. Maybe this team is a geographic location, an office location, and we've got a new training course on health and safety or best practice in the building. We can simply link to a training course right from the top of this Teams window. So with this example, right on topic, we've got a Teams training course here. You can see that I've demoed this plenty of times because I'm quite far through this particular course, and I'm enrolled to it. but I can interact with this learning material, and I can see all of the bits and pieces in each of these learning modules that we're looking at here, and I can see where I got to last time. So these modules are currently free to navigate, and I'll go through an instructor-led and blended example shortly, but just to give you an idea of what the content looks like. If I was to simply press play on this piece of learning, that's going to take me exactly where I was last time. So that's 43% of the way through, and we can see that I'm on this working on a file together course here, and I have the ability to continue my learning. I won't press play because I'll get the volume and it'll distract me, and you guys won't. But you know, from an e-learning perspective, very, very simple to sort of paste that information where we're already working within the Teams window. Now, I'll jump to the course catalog, and that's going to lead me nicely onto the virtual instructor-led piece, which I've been hinting at so far. You can provide access to a course catalog, and as we've already mentioned, all of these are courses that we've got in our LMS 365 environment, and these are the ones that I have access to based on my role. So we can target courses to specific groups of users, specific sectors in the business, divisions, departments, etc. And these are the ones that I have access to. Now, if I like the look of one of these courses and I want to view a course, and conveniently I'm going to view the virtual instructor-led course to give you an idea, I can click into that particular course and I've got the information right in front of me. So again, we're not going anywhere else. We're still in our Teams, still authenticated through that. And I've got this course description here. This is the spin workshop. I can see that it's a webinar course, so there's going to be an instructor of sorts, and it's going to be virtual. Again, this course type, we could, you know, like I said, the hybrid learning is here to stay. So if you are going to be looking at managing some classroom courses as well, we can build those into this as easy as it is to build a webinar. It's very, very simple. But whenever there's a time and a resource associated to a course, you will see all the information in these course sessions here. So I can see the number of available places on this particular course. I can see when it's going to start, and I can see it's an hour long, which if I like the look of that, I could simply click this button and enroll to, which I'll do in just a moment. But if I want to get a little bit more information and an overview of what's actually going to be covered here, I can see that there's a little bit of pre-reading to this course. Now, maybe this, you know, we want to test those users on the actual instructor-led session. Maybe we want to make sure that they are doing what they say they're doing. I mean, this is a really important qualification that they've got to do, and we want to make sure that they've got all of the information ahead of the session. Well, we can simply build a module out which has got some pre-reading in. So if I was to click enroll to this course, I will get a notification I've successfully enrolled to the course, and you can see that that padlock has now become open. So I have the ability to check out the information that's within this learning module here, and I'm doing this ahead of the session that is locked because I haven't completed this yet, and that training session in a couple of weeks' time. But I can simply start this, and it's going to bring up the document that they've embedded into this course here, and I can read through this. Once I've read through all this information, I'm hurrying, just conscious of time. I now have this confirm and read and understood tick box here. Now I'm confirming that I've read and understood that. That is going to be a reportable piece of information for the instructor to then say, this person has read and understood that, and they've confirmed. They're making themselves liable for the quiz or the questions that are going to precede them. And simply, if I go just to show you the learning modules within that, what we can do if we don't want the actual like the presentation that the virtual instructor that the instructor is going to be running through, if we don't want users to have access to that ahead of time, we can set a publishing time to this. So that we set a publishing time to this piece of this module here, this bit of information that would be in line with these times here. I've got it so you could see it, and that there's a presentation there. But if we just want it to be available when the session starts, we can set a publishing restriction on there. But say we come up to, you know, say it's the 25th of May, it's just before 11. I want to come in. I'll have all the notifications under the sun to say that you know, this course is starting and that you were enrolled to it and you must attend. I'll have a calendar invitation in my Outlook. I can simply click this button here, and you can see if I hover over it, it's the Teams link that we've set up for that course. So a neat way. And I'm literally staying within Teams the whole time. I've stayed within Teams to do the pre-reading and to do the actual instructor-led course I'm going to go into. Now, I'm going to precede and guess that there's some questions on how that was actually set up. That course was set up. So I'm going to jump into the admin center, because the questions that we always get are, how do we know that someone's attended? How can we track a user attendance? How can we actually get that Teams link or that conference call link in the course information? So if I come to the administration center, and just to touch on it, this is where everything lives. All of our content, all of our courses, our quizzes, our learner administration, our native reporting, this is where it lives. That's a whole nother session in itself. But if I find this course that I was just looking at, and I click on it and I want to edit the course, this is all of the information that we saw on that home page. Now, if I want to see how we built the actual course session, which is where we saw the date and the time and we saw the Teams link, we come here and we can add as many course sessions to these as we like. Maybe it's something that's going to be running every week, every fortnight. I can simply click on here and I can edit this course session. And this is where I specify dates, times. I'll copy the URL for the for the Teams link itself. An automated way of doing that is coming very shortly. I can manage the instructors. So if I want multiple instructors for this particular session, then I can add those in there. I can also track an internal cost to it. And I can also allow learners to register their own attendance via the LMS 365 mobile app. Likewise, we've got a QR code as well that they could scan and confirm their attendance as well. And if I want to be really strict on those registration times, I can limit them to maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the start of that to make sure that they are there. I really just wanted to touch on that, because that is probably, when we talk about instructor-led sessions, whether it be it's the same for a classroom or a webinar, those are the most common questions. So I thought I would preempt it and jump in there and get that covered off. Now, I am conscious of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. I was going to touch on reporting, but maybe should we save that for another session, Travis, and dive in some questions before the end of the meeting?
Certainly could do. I can see that there have been some questions, but
okay.
There's been a fantastic response from pretty much everybody in there. So, are there any additional questions that you guys would like to have? Because I don't think there's any open questions apart from.
Have you been hard work responding to them, Travis? Because I can't see that.
your colleague Sarah has.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
But there was a question that wasn't answered, and it's honestly something I don't know the answer to, but we can talk about it. And the question is whether or not live caption works in the breakout rooms. Here we go. Sarah says that live captions are something individuals can switch on for their own use. Thank you. Lifesaver there, Sarah. So,
thank you, Sarah.
In theory, yes. And Rodolfo has real life experience that it does work, and that people usually have more rights in there than in a normal meeting where there are attendees only. So thanks a lot for that feedback, Rodolfo. And a separate recording for breakout rooms. Is that one that you can answer as well, Rodolfo? I think we might have our super user breakout room.
Doing our job for us here. This is great.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah.
This is collaboration. Yes, of course. So there should be a separate recording for breakout rooms. The question, this might be one for you, Charlie here. Jules is asking whether it's possible to automatically send a calendar invite for delegates who enroll on virtual workshops.
Yes, that is correct. So whether it's a virtual workshop, whether it's a classroom session, any course that has a course session associated to it will have an automatic calendar invite that goes out to each delegate, and that will contain. You can specify what information that contains as well. Hopefully that answers the question. And then I did want to just highlight a couple of things on this final slide here. If you want to connect with Travis, right, those QR codes are there. Travis pumps out some really good information around Teams, around learning and things like that. So please feel free to connect with Travis and I. We will be sharing a couple of useful links as well. So Travis touched on the useful tips for Teams breakout rooms and those meeting sessions. We will be sharing. We've done an article recently, a blog post on that. So that will be shared with you guys as well. Were there any other further questions? I can see they were coming in the chat.
So yeah, Maria had a question about embedding forms and quizzes into the pre-read. Charlie, and Sarah answered that, but maybe you could just give a verbal scenario for the others who are not following the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could definitely build those in. Each of those learning modules could be, a piece of content. That example there was a Word document, but that could be a quiz. It could be, a piece of information like that, and maybe an embedded video followed by a quiz. It's so flexible in the way that you can build out. That was a very generic and simple sort of scenario that we ran through there. But there's a native quiz builder within LMS 365 which allows you to build out whatever question formats you want. Really, you've got a full system there, and all of that is reportable, and you've got all sorts of parameters that you can set in those quiz builders. Likewise, if you wanted to use a Microsoft form instead, very, very simple to embed that. It's a demo for a separate day, but it literally is drag and drop functionality when it comes to building those learning modules out. Very, very simple. How will mandatory course work? Mandatory, you specify when you're building the course out, you specify whether it's a mandatory or optional. If it's mandatory, then that is going to require that everybody in the organization, and that is just pulling through your Microsoft information. We don't have to add those users if they're internal. If they're external, we grant them access. But if it's mandatory, it's a simple tick box. Mandatory, yes or no.
And I'll just go a little bit further to say that the enrollment functionality for those kind of mandatory courses is built on your existing Microsoft 365 grouping. So if you've got specific categories of internal employees, or maybe even external partners or contractors who you're training as well, then you can specify for specific groups what is mandatory. And as soon as a group is enrolled into one of those pieces of mandatory training, then anyone added to that group at a later date will also automatically be enrolled.
And Sarah's just said, should we show the, thank you for that, Travis. Sarah just said, should we show the SharePoint view also? We'll probably save that for another time. It is probably worth mentioning that all of this information that we showed directly embedded within Teams can be accessed through the SharePoint functionality, which is through your browser. So the same way that you'd access your documents, the same way you'd access your intranet if it lives there, you'd have an LMS course site collection for that. So anything that we showed there, you can have a jazzy front page on it if you like, entirely up to you. But we'll probably save that for another day, I think, Sarah, just conscious of time and having that set up as well. I'll put the floor out one more time. Any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I can see, we've got, was that a round of applause I saw down the bottom there? I thought there was a hand raised, and then I saw a round of applause. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're more than welcome to ping Travis or I on LinkedIn at any time, or if there's any other questions that you need, feel free to inquire through the website as well. Thank you everybody for your time. We'll close out, and I appreciate your time as well, Travis.
My pleasure.